to take this opportunity of expressing my thanks and sincere gratitude to Mr. Frank Capra, the director of It Happened One Night, and Miss Claudette Colbert, who was gracious enough to co-star with me in that same picture. Thank you.
Hollywood's golden age sold perfection. Gleaming smiles, immaculate suits, epic romances, and stars so luminous they seemed carved from stardust itself. But behind that polished surface lived a world far more complicated. A world of secrets, scandals, and human flaws hidden beneath layers of studio-crafted myth. And no story captures that contrast more sharply than the viral claim that Clark Gable once revealed, the 6 most evil actors of Hollywood's golden era. Here's the truth, he never made such a list. There is no interview, no memoir, no letter where Gable condemned anyone. In fact, his own life was marked by shadows the studios worked tirelessly to conceal, including controversies that still spark debate today. So rather than chase a fictional list, tonight we peel back something far more revealing. 6 real Hollywood scandals often labeled evil, misunderstood, exaggerated, or buried entirely. Not a countdown of villains, but a study of the system that protected some, destroyed others, and shaped legends through silence as much as spectacle. Because in old Hollywood, morality wasn't black and white. It flickered like the real itself. Tell me, have you ever clicked a shocking headline only to discover the truth was far more complicated? Number 6. Robert Mitchum. If Hollywood in the 1940s had a patron saint of rebellion, it was Robert Mitchum.
You gonna buy me a drink?
Waiter?
That'll be double, waiter. 12-year-old. My rich cousin here says nothing's too good for old Max.
Tall, sleepy-eyed, and permanently wrapped in an aura of I don't care. He moved through the studio system like a man allergic to authority. Directors complained he was too casual. Producers claimed he was too difficult. Publicists said he was unmanageable. And audiences? They adored him. Mitchum's charm came from a rare gift. He made danger look effortless. But in 1948, Mitchum discovered the one thing even the Golden Age couldn't protect him from: scandal. The kind that could end a career, ruin a family, and stain a legacy forever. It began with a simple party. A house in Laurel Canyon, soft music, cigarettes passed around a room. Mitchum wasn't the host. He was just there, lounging, laughing, inhabiting the kind of quiet mischief that followed him everywhere. Then the police arrived. Not slowly, not politely. They stormed in like a raid, cameras already tipped off, flashbulbs ready. Within minutes, Mitchum was on the floor in handcuffs, arrested for the crime that, at the time, could get a man blacklisted: marijuana possession. In the moment they dragged him out, Mitchum whispered to a reporter, "Well, this is the bitter end of everything. My career, my marriage, everything." And he believed it. In 1948, a drug charge wasn't bad publicity. It was professional extinction. Studios didn't tolerate immorality. Not when they spent millions crafting images of clean-cut heroes and virtuous leading men. A single misstep could undo decades. Mitchum wasn't naive. He knew how these stories went. He had seen actors vanish for less. And yet, fate, or perhaps studio strategy, had other plans. He served a 2-month sentence, spent time on a prison farm, chopped weeds, posed for grim newspaper photos, and then walked out to find something unbelievable waiting for him. A bigger career than before. Some historians claim the bust was orchestrated, a publicity stunt designed to harden his bad boy persona. Mitchum always denied it, and whether or not it was true, the result was the same. The scandal didn't destroy him. It minted him into legend.
These damn things are always up around your neck. Your name's Phil, isn't it?
Philip, what's yours?
Helen, kiss me.
Because here's the irony of Robert Mitchum's life. The thing that should have ended him actually crystallized what audiences loved most about him. He wasn't polished. He wasn't precious. He wasn't pretending. Mitchum didn't hide behind studio-crafted innocence. He lived exactly as he pleased, and the world, instead of condemning him, was fascinated. In a list of Hollywood's evil, Mitchum barely qualifies. Smoking marijuana may have scandalized newspapers, but compared to the violence, exploitation, and unchecked power elsewhere in the industry, his crime looks almost quaint. His story doesn't reveal malice. It reveals hypocrisy, a system that punished some, protected others, and occasionally rewarded the very thing it claimed to despise. So why start the countdown with Robert Mitchum? Because his scandal reminds us that evil in Hollywood was never about morality. It was about perception, timing, and who the studios chose to forgive. Number 5. Gloria Graham. Gloria Graham was the kind of actress Hollywood adored on screen, but feared off it.
I only wear it when I don't care how I look.
With her half-whispered voice, wounded kitten eyes, and dangerous softness, she played femme fatales who felt real. Not because she acted them, but because she understood them. Graham projected vulnerability layered over steel, a woman both bruised and unbreakable. Yet behind that brilliance lived a personal life that the Golden Age press devoured like vultures circling a fresh scandal. Her story begins not on a film set, but at home, a place Hollywood insisted must look perfect, even when it was anything but. In 1951, Graham was married to director Nicholas Ray. Their relationship was strained, chaotic, and riddled with infidelity. But nothing prepared Ray, or Hollywood, for what he claimed he saw one June afternoon. He later told friends and reporters he came home to find Graham in bed with his 13-year-old stepson, Anthony Tony Ray. Whether that moment actually happened the way Ray described is still debated. Some biographers insist it was a fabrication, others say the timeline doesn't add up, and a few believe Ray exaggerated the truth to punish Graham during their vicious divorce. In Hollywood's golden age, a woman didn't need to be guilty. She only needed to be accused. And that was enough. The rumor spread like wildfire. Studios panicked. Columnists sharpened their knives. For a woman already labeled difficult, the allegation became a scarlet letter. Directors began hesitating before casting her. Agents stopped returning calls. Hollywood has always been crueler to women than men, but Graham's fall was especially swift and merciless. Then came the twist no one saw coming. In 1960, nearly a decade after the alleged incident, Graham married Tony Ray. He was 23. She was 37. They had 2 children and stayed together 14 years. To some, this vindicated the scandal. To others, it contradicted it. To most, it just made the story more confusing and more sensational. Hollywood doesn't care about nuance. It cares about headlines. Graham had crossed an invisible line. She lived a life outside the studio's control. The tragedy is that while the tabloids feasted, Graham suffered in silence. The stress triggered a nervous breakdown. Her career, once filled with promise, slowly crumbled. She won an Academy Award, but even that couldn't protect her from a system eager to brand independent women as dangerous. Was Gloria Graham evil? Number. She was human, messy, brilliant, impulsive, fragile, and far more honest about her desires than the world around her was prepared to accept. Her story reveals how quickly the Golden Age turned on women who stepped outside Hollywood's narrow script. Because in that era, the real sin wasn't scandal. It was refusing to hide it. And that's why Graham belongs on this list. Not as a villain, but as a woman destroyed by a culture hungry for one. Number 4. Wallace Beery. Wallace Beery was a giant in Hollywood's golden age, literally and figuratively. Broad-shouldered, booming-voiced, and larger than life, he played lovable lugs and intimidating brutes with equal ease.
I don't like that. I was mad myself a while ago, but now I'm pretty good, all right now.
Audiences adored him. Studios protected him. And behind the scenes, Beery behaved exactly like a man who knew he was untouchable. But Beery's legacy carries a shadow that refuses to fade. A rumor so persistent, so carefully buried, and so haunting that it has hovered over his name for nearly a century. It all begins on the night of December 21st, 1937. Comedian Ted Healy, best known as the creator of the Three Stooges, stumbled out of the Trocadero nightclub in Hollywood, bruised, battered, and confused. Hours later, he was dead. The official report blamed alcohol, kidney issues, and natural causes. But even in 1937, the whispers started immediately. Healy didn't just fall, he was beaten. And three names surfaced again and again. Pat DiCicco, a known Hollywood fixer with mob ties. Cubby Broccoli, future Bond producer. And Wallace Beery, MGM's valuable world-famous star. According to biographer E.J. Fleming and others who studied the case, the three men allegedly jumped Healy in a drunken brawl outside the nightclub. The fight wasn't fair. It wasn't noble. It was rage mixed with alcohol, privilege mixed with impunity. MGM's legendary fixer, Eddie Mannix, was said to have moved quickly, pressuring the coroner, paying off reporters, and, most tellingly, putting Beery on the next train out of California before the press could ask questions. Beery's sudden vacation lasted weeks. When he returned, the story had cooled. The studio's version, Healy died of drinking, became the official one. And just like that, the case dissolved into the fog of Hollywood revisionism. But the rumor didn't. For decades, writers, historians, and Stooges fans have circled the story, tracing every lead, every witness, every contradiction. Nothing has ever been proven. Nothing has ever been disproven. Beery never addressed it publicly. He never apologized, never explained, never even hinted at involvement. Instead, he did what protected stars of the Golden Age often did best. He kept working, kept smiling, kept playing the roles America loved him for. And that silence might be the most damning part. Was Wallace Beery evil? We can't say. The evidence is circumstantial, the accounts conflict. The truth lies buried under decades of studio manipulation and missing documents. But the gravity of the rumor, and the speed with which MGM moved to protect him, reveals something about Beery, and something even more troubling about Hollywood itself. The system decided who was allowed to be innocent. In a world where an allegation could destroy one career and barely scratch another, Beery stands as a symbol of the imbalance of power that defined the Golden Age. He may not have been proven guilty, but he was certainly protected. And sometimes, in Hollywood, that says even more. Number 3. Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. Long before Clark Gable, long before Errol Flynn, long before Hollywood perfected the art of scandal control, there was Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle.
The position is this job still open?
Oh, you are a baker.
Yes, sir, and I sure need dough.
I got it.
A man who soared higher and fell harder than almost any star of the silent era. He was one of the first true Hollywood celebrities, beloved by audiences, adored by children, praised by critics, and paid more than nearly every actor of his time. Arbuckle wasn't just famous, he was foundational. And then in 1921, his world ended in a single weekend. It was Labor Day. Arbuckle traveled to San Francisco's St. Francis Hotel with a few friends. Champagne flowed, music played, guests drifted in and out. Among them were Virginia Rapp, a young actress, and Maud Delmont, a woman with a talent for manufacturing trouble. What happened in room 1219 has been debated for over a century, but one fact is certain. Later that evening, Rapp collapsed in pain. 4 days later, she was dead. The tragedy itself should have sparked sorrow. Instead, it sparked a media firestorm. William Randolph Hearst, the most powerful publisher in America, smelled blood. He plastered headlines accusing Arbuckle of raping Rapp with a Coke bottle, crushing her organs, and leaving her to die. These stories were horrifying, cinematic, and completely unproven. No witness supported them. No medical evidence confirmed them. Even Rapp's own doctor insisted the claim was impossible. But Hearst's papers didn't care about truth, they cared about sales. And America believed every word. Arbuckle was arrested, charged with manslaughter, and dragged into a trial that lasted months. He was a man devoured by the machinery of fame, sacrificed so the press and the public could gorge themselves on outrage. His story matters because it reveals a brutal truth. In Hollywood's golden age, innocence wasn't protection, it was irrelevant. Once a narrative took hold, no verdict could dismantle it. Arbuckle didn't fall from grace. He was pushed. Number 2. Errol Flynn. If Hollywood ever produced a perfect movie star, it was Errol Flynn. The smirking daredevil, the reckless romantic, the man who moved through adventure films like he'd been born with a sword in his hand. Flynn wasn't acting, he was living. Everything about him felt dangerous, electric, seductive.
Hello there, my man. I would like to buy a drink for all the gentlemen in the house. Here. Oh.
Hollywood adored him. Audiences worshipped him. And then, in 1942, the image shattered. Flynn was charged with statutory rape. The accusations came from 2 teenage girls, Betty Hansen and Peggy Satterley. Both underage, both vulnerable, both swept into a legal storm that exposed not only Flynn's private life, but Hollywood's ability to shape public opinion. The headlines were explosive. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, newsreels ran daily updates. Columnists described Flynn as a silver-tongued predator, a man whose charm concealed darker impulses studios braced for disaster. A sex scandal this severe could sink not just a star, but an entire slate of films. Yet Flynn didn't crumble. He charmed the courtroom, he flashed smiles at reporters, he joked with jurors. His fans, overwhelmingly women, gathered outside holding signs that read, "We believe in Errol," and "He's no cad." It was a bizarre scene. A man on trial for exploiting minors, buoyed by an army of admirers screaming for his innocence. The trial lasted weeks. The testimony was emotional, contradictory, heavily influenced by character assassinations and the power imbalance of the era. Flynn's defense team painted the girls as opportunists. The prosecution painted Flynn as a predatory aristocrat. It wasn't just a legal battle, it was a cultural spectacle. And then came the verdict. After hours of deliberation, the jury returned. Not guilty, on all counts. Flynn lit a cigarette and grinned. To Hollywood, it was salvation. To the public, it was vindication. To historians, it remains a case study in power. Because acquittal doesn't erase trauma. It doesn't resolve contradictions. It doesn't answer every question. It simply means the state could not prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt. But in 1943, the public didn't engage in nuance. They celebrated. Flynn walked out not diminished, but mythologized. His image as a ladies' man intensified. The phrase "in like Flynn" entered popular slang, forever linking his notoriety to virility rather than violation. It was a scandal that did nothing to punish him, but everything to define him. Was Errol Flynn evil? The truth is complicated. The evidence was murky. The trial was influenced by celebrity, gender, and era. And Flynn's glittering charm did as much work as his lawyers. But what makes Flynn's story essential to this countdown isn't a verdict or a rumor. It's the uncomfortable question at its heart. What does justice look like when a powerful man stands accused and the world wants him to be innocent? For all the swashbuckling roles he played, the pirate, the hero, the rebel, the role Flynn performed best may have been the one he played in court. The untouchable star who walked through fire without a burn. And Hollywood made sure he stayed that way. Number 1. Spade Cooley. In a countdown filled with scandal, tragedy, and twisted legacies, no figure casts a darker shadow than Spade Cooley.
Oh my Miss Molly, I'm in love with you. Oh me, oh my Miss Molly, won't you say you love me too?
A man once celebrated as the king of Western swing, a television pioneer, a charismatic performer, and ultimately, a convicted murderer whose final act remains one of the most horrifying crimes in Hollywood's history. Cooley's rise was dazzling. He played dance halls packed with thousands. His show drew record audiences. His cowboy charm made him a natural fit for B-movies and music programs. To the public, Cooley was a handsome, polished entertainer, the kind of star Americans trusted. But behind closed doors, his life was unraveling. Cooley was a violent alcoholic, paranoid, and increasingly unhinged. He believed his wife, Ella May, was cheating on him. He accused her of affairs she never had. He stalked her, interrogated her, isolated her. The home that once echoed with music became a prison built from fear. Their daughter, 14-year-old Melody, tiptoed through the house like a ghost, trying not to provoke the tension she knew too well. Then came the night that sealed Cooley's legacy forever. On April 3rd, 1961, in their California home, Cooley snapped. What followed was so brutal it shocked even hardened investigators. Melody later testified that Cooley beat her mother savagely, punching, kicking, slamming her against walls and furniture. He dragged her by the hair, stomped on her stomach, and burned her breast with a lit cigarette, all while forcing his teenage daughter to watch. Ella Mae's screams echoed through the home. Her pleas went unanswered. When she collapsed, Cooley refused to call for help until it was far too late. By the time doctors arrived, she was dead. The trial that followed revealed the full extent of Cooley's cruelty. Prosecutors described injuries so severe they compared them to battlefield trauma. Witnesses testified that Cooley seemed detached, almost proud, discussing the attack with a chilling lack of remorse. The jury didn't deliberate long. He was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. But Hollywood, ever skilled at rewriting narratives, didn't dwell on Cooley's fall. The studios had never fully embraced him, so burying his name was easy. His fans vanished. His music faded. He became a ghost, a cautionary tale whispered about but rarely acknowledged as part of Hollywood's history. Then, in one final twist of irony, Cooley died in 1969, while on a furlough from prison. He had been granted temporary release to perform at a benefit concert, and shortly after stepping off stage to applause, he suffered a fatal heart attack. It was as if his body waited for one last spotlight before collapsing into the darkness he had created. Spade Cooley isn't just the darkest entry on this list. He's a reminder of how deeply evil can hide behind fame, charm, and glitter. In a town built on illusions, his story rips the curtain open. Because some Hollywood scandals aren't myths, some are nightmares. Hollywood's golden age glowed with glamour, but its shadows ran deep. Tonight, we didn't explore a list Clark Gable ever created, because he never made one. Instead, we examined something far more revealing: the real scandals, tragedies, and unchecked power that shaped the era he lived in. These stories weren't fiction, nor were they simple tales of evil people. They were reminders that fame doesn't grant virtue, innocence, or immunity, only visibility. Arbuckle was destroyed by lies. Mitchum was forgiven for rebellion. Graham was punished for desire. Beery was protected by silence. Flynn was elevated by charm. And Spade Cooley stands as a grim monument to what happens when real violence hides behind the glow of celebrity. In the end, labels like evil are too easy, too convenient. The truth is messier, more human, and far more uncomfortable. These stories challenge us to look beyond the studio-polished legends and ask harder questions about justice, power, and the myths we continue to believe. So now I want to hear from you. Which of these stories surprised you the most? And do you think today's Hollywood is any different? If this deep dive moved you, like and subscribe for more untold stories from cinema's forgotten corners.